77 WABC and Ramsey Mazda. Back the Blue.
And I'm Dominic Carter, and welcome. And we have an all-star panel. I'm going to get to them in just a second, but I want to start out with the fact that we have law enforcement officers in uniform in the audience, and please give yourselves a round of applause. This is about Back the Blue. And I've got to be honest with you guys. Let me introduce the panel, and then I'm going to get to one of the station's owners that's here, Marco Katzimatidis. We are joined by Mike Kemper, Chief of Transit for the NYPD. Thank you. We are also joined by the legendary Paul DiGiacomo of the Detectives Endowment Association for the NYPD. And we are also joined by a remarkable police commissioner to his right, and that is Patrick Ryder, the police commissioner of Nassau County. Now, we're going to have an interesting conversation. But I do want to say that whether it's just this month alone, I believe, whether it's Greek Independence Day, whether it's Hispanic Heritage Day, Italian Heritage Day, and some of the other events, Columbus Day, celebrating African Americans, celebrating Latinos, celebrating Asians. It is the Asian American community. It is a mandate for us here at 77 WABC from the station's owners. And that is John Katzimatidis and Margot Katzimatidis. And Mrs. Katzimatidis is a rock star. She is sitting front and center. And please, let's give her a round of applause. Thank you, Mrs. Katzimatidis, for all that you do. So, gentlemen, I want to have a lively discussion. Let me be clear, very clear. Nothing pisses me off more than what I hear sometimes from some elements of the community. Denouncing the police, attacking the police, defund the police, Black Lives Matter. I'm just going to put it out there. We can go on and on and on. And of course, the biggest culprit of it all happens to be bail reform. So I want us to have an interesting conversation. I may ask you a question, I may not ask you a question. And I just want you to chime in. But I guess I'll start with you, Paul. You're outspoken. And, well, wait a minute. Let's start with the commissioner. Let's start with the commissioner of where we stand currently, because it is my firm belief that we should back our police 1,000%. 1,000%. And frankly, some of the communities that need the police the most are some elements are the loudest critics. So, Commissioner, where do we stand right now? And how do we get to where we need to be? And that's 1,000% in the corner of our police officers. And why do I say that? Because you interact with people every day when that person is having the worst day of their life. That's what you do for a living. You put your lives on the line. You save people, and it's time out for the BS. It's time out for the nonsense. This defund the police is absolute garbage, political rhetoric that is doing nothing but destroying America. Commissioner, go right ahead, please.
Any major company in the United States, if you have failure in your company, you try to fix it. You invest in it. If you don't like the service of the what you get from your police department, you invest. You put more money into training. You hire more officers. That's going to give you the better security that you're looking for. You don't walk away and say defund it, take less. Look what happened in Chicago this morning. They woke up and the mayor is saying, "Hey, I think it's going to be a good time to invest in more police in the Chicago PD." Really? It took this long to get you there? This is what the violence on our streets in this country today is directly related to the programs and the laws that are being written coming out of our so-called legislators. Those who are up in Albany handing down bail reform. I've been a cop for 40 years now. And in my 40 years, back in the 80s, it was the revolving door. In the door, out the door. That's what happened. It's back. And it may not be at some of our larger crimes, but if you look at the smaller crimes, those quality of life, what you pay your taxes for to live in a safe and secure environment that your kids can walk to school freely. But these low-level crimes that are going out and the quality of life are just taking it away. And it's because they go in, we give them a ticket, and they walk back out the door. And that cycle goes on for at least 45 days before the first ticket ends up in court. And then you get dismissed. And if you don't show up, they call you and they warn you. You missed your court date, you got to come back. Missed my court date. All right, I didn't get to it. I'll get to it next week. No, you got to show up. Make sure we're going to issue a warrant. It used to be the judge would hand down the warrant from the court and you'd go and immediately be arrested. Now, it's we give 1-2 warnings before we get them back in court. It's a problem, and if we're going to change things, you ask how we move it, you got to change the lawmakers to change the laws.
Mr. DiGiacomo, how did we get to this point? There used to be a time when police were held in such esteem, as you should be, for what you do day in, day out. For the members of law enforcement that are here with us today, how did we get to where we are right now?
Well, I think the reason being that for the first time in my 40 years in the police department, we always had support of government in one level, whether it be the city, the state, or federal. We always had one of those entities supporting the police. But in the recent years, every entity, the city, the state, and the federal government, turned their backs on the police. And that sent a loud, clear message to the criminal element. They could do what they want, when they want, with no consequences.
Chief?
Yeah, just listening to what the commissioner and what Paul's saying, I can't agree more. The consequences, lack of consequences. Just talking about the subway system in New York City, we find ourselves, every day arresting people. And a lot of the people that we're arresting are repeat customers. What am I talking about, repeat customers? There are people that wake up each day and go to work, and their job is to prey on innocent New Yorkers. And we see that. And far too often we find ourselves arresting the same people over and over and over again. I think someone said it before. I think John Catsimatidis said it before. Like, there are just some people that don't deserve to be in a civilized society, and that's unfortunate. And we're not saying everyone deserves jail. That's not what we're saying. But some people do, and those people that are recidivist criminals that prey on New Yorkers, there needs to be stronger consequences.
Chief, I couldn't agree with you more. There are some people, there are some elements of society that just don't belong in a civilized society. And we have to be honest with that. We have to stop playing these games. The community activists have to stop pretending that it's different. I just don't get it. Mr. DiGiacomo.
John, let me jump in.
Please.
We were talking to Paul DiGiacomo a little while ago about this, and this is a topic that we believe in and we agree upon. Who is advocating for the victim, right? Who is advocating for the victim? Because, as we're sitting here right now, there are countless, and probably some people might say far too many, groups and organizations and individuals advocating for the bad guy, advocating for the people that are committing crimes and preying upon New Yorkers. Who is advocating for the victims? And there is one group of special people that is a true victim advocate, and that's New York City cops. And to the cops that are in this room and the cops that may be listening to me, just recognize that and know that you, and to the detectives and every New York City NYPD employee, you are the true victim advocate, and we pride ourselves on that.
That is true. That is very true. And when you watch something go down, it is always the police officer, he or she, that is there to help the person, advocating for the person. Mr. DiGiacomo, I guess how do we turn this around? How do we get back to the point where police officers are seen for what they are, absolute American heroes?
Well, by doing things like we did today, Back to Blue is a morale booster for the police department, but we have to get more people in the community involved in policing again. You got to raise the children in these communities to like the police, not hate the police. And that's just a start, because every time a New York City cop goes out there, whether it be for a theft of service, a petty larceny, and he or she takes his handcuffs out to handcuff that individual, they're putting their lives on the line. And I just want to put this in perspective. If you look over the years, for instance, in the transit police department, Every cop that was killed, just about every cop that was killed in the transit police was killed over a 35-cent fare. Think about that. And they lost their life for a fare beat, right? And now we're letting fare beats, well, not now in the chief capital, but we were letting people jump the turnstile with no consequences. And all those cops died in vain. Until now, we're starting to enforce those laws again. Listen, there are laws on the books, and they have to be followed. If these politicians don't want us to make these arrests, well, take those laws off the books.
So now, Commissioner, police officers are expected to be mental health counselors, social workers, law enforcement, coaches in your spare time. I could name medics. I could name about delivering babies. I could deliver about 8 or 9 jobs, right? And I always try, as a rule of thumb, whenever I see a police officer, I mean, I even go as far, to be honest with you, to offer to try and pay for their meal when I see them in my local deli, and they often say no, because I guess it's a violation of the rules.
They won't say no in Nassau County. You can buy it.
Let me know when you're at Peter Luger's. I'll go there in uniform.
Fair enough, gentlemen, fair enough. Commissioner, why is it around the country we're seeing a phenomenon where it's very difficult to get people to join police agencies? Why?
Well, I think Paul said it a minute ago. It's that message that you teach us to hate the police and not respect the police. Your message outside, it's about respect for the men and women in law enforcement. We don't ask for much. We really, truly don't. We go out there and we keep our oath to protect and serve. We lay down our lives for complete strangers. What other profession does that? And
None
when you look
that I
at
can think
it,
of. Very
and
few.
they say first responders, the true first responders are the men and women in law enforcement. And this is not a knock to the fire department or any other profession out there, because they're all great. But the first one to the fire is the cop in the middle of the night. The first one to that baby being delivered is the cop. The first one to that shooting, the first one to be shot at is the cop. And so when you talk about first responders, the respect level has gone down. In Nassau County, we're giving a test in January. And the test right now, we had 34,000 people pre-registered to take the test. The test ends in 5 days. You got to sign up in 5 more days. We only have 5,000 that actually signed up. 5,000 for the Nassau County Police Department test. And this is because there's a message out there that is a discord that disrespects the police department. And we got to, again, the greatest job in the world is serving others. It's the most selfish thing you can do because you get that self-gratification. You get that reward. The men and women that go out there and serve are doing a phenomenal job. Greatest police department in the world. We're in that city right now. And we know that, and the size alone speaks for what the job they have to do. But if you go out and you disrespect the job, you disrespect the men and women, that message runs through the entire family of blue, and then next thing you know, people are like, I don't want to be a cop. I don't want no part of that job. Wrong message. The message is serve, protect, be part of that solution.
Just to jump on that, and just think about the challenge or the challenging work that our cops do each and every day. I mean, some of our cops are young, and I'm looking at the police officers that are in this room right now, and just thinking about the cops that work in the NYPD. We ask them to do such a difficult job. They're responding to, this is not a Hollywood movie. This is not a TV show. They are responding, as we sit here right now throughout the city, there are cops that are responding to super complex, non-scripted scenarios. Think about that. And they're asked to make split-second decisions that have true impact. And sometimes those decisions that are made have to be made in split seconds as life or death situations. That's just the truth. And then you have groups of people going to the videotape and frame by frame, and they spend months, sometimes years, critiquing what that cop had to do in 2 seconds. But here's my message. My message is these cops, they are exceptional human beings, and they do their job exceptionally. So, that's just a challenge, and that's just the truth about what's going on right now.
I'd like to just bring up one point in regards to policing today. The verbal and physical abuse that these cops are taking on the street is just horrendous. But another entity that really brings down the police department is CCRB. They are over aggressive. They bring charges against our detectives and our cops, and they've never walked in our shoes. That's my problem. I understand there needs to be some oversight, but when you have a college kid that has no experience in life itself, and they're critiquing cops in riot situations, in shooting situations, and bringing charges and specifications against those cops and those detectives, I think it's an entity that's not productive to the people of the city, and it's not productive to keeping police on this job.
Now, we've been joined by the man that put all this together, but again, I'm going to get to Mr. Catsimatidis in just 1 second. I just have to acknowledge Mrs. Catsimatidis, again, the co-owner of No. And here's why. Because the mandate comes from these two. And these two have said, certainly to me, to Sid Rosenberg, I don't think Sid is still here, but Sid emceed the press conference. I was almost in tears at that press conference, listening to the.
I was in tears listening to that woman that lost her son.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Mr. Catsimatidis. And so I'm thanking Mrs. Catsimatidis because the vision plus the resources to make it happen has come from these two. And Mr. Catsimatidis, I know your schedule is impossible, but I thank you for squeezing out some time. And Mr. Catsimatidis does almost every one of these events that we do celebrating the community. He believes, and they both believe, that diversity is extremely important. But I'm so thankful that I work for owners that support the police. Because, and it bothers me, I'm going to be honest and direct, that some members of my community, of people that look like me, are some of the biggest critics, I'm not saying all, of law enforcement. And you guys, I'm going to say what you probably can't say, you go by the stats of where the crime is being committed. That's not racism. That's called trying to help people. Each and every day. Before you continue, Mr. DiGiacomo, I want to bring in the owner, Mr. Catsimatidis. He made all of this possible, and he sends the mandate down to all of us. Mr. Catsimatidis.
Well, I think it's very important that the city council people that want to defund the police, that their districts know about that. I mean, it's almost like saying in your tell the districts that in your district, your city council person almost wants to turn off 911. Who are you going to call if you have a problem? Who are you going to call? You're going to call 911. But if your city council person wants to defund the police, you're going to have less police officers. And it's wrong. But Dominic, you're on. You have a terrific ratings at midnight. You got to tell all your people that listen to you, and I'll tell all the people who listen to me, and Sid will tell all the people who listen to him, and Ray Kelly's son will tell all the people at tell them out there, vote for the people. I don't care if they're Democrats or Republicans, I don't care. But vote for the people that want to support the police, not defund the police.
Gentlemen, to Mr. Catsimatidis' point, let's be very clear. When you're in trouble, what's the first thing that you do? You dial 911, and here comes the men and women of law enforcement within seconds, within minutes. They don't know what they're walking into. It could cost them their lives. They may not go home to their families at the end of the day. Mr. Catsimatidis.
And Dominic, what we should do between me, you, or any of our hosts, do a public service commercial over the next 3 weeks that we replay and replay and replay on WABC, and ask the other channels to replay it too. And I urge your relationship or the other channels to do similar one. that you want the number one priority. In today's papers, 540,000 New Yorkers have left New York State. If that's true, and most likely it's mostly true, if that's true, how long before your mayor or or the governor or the city council or the say, oh crap, we got to cut the budget, and then they're forced to cut, and that's the scary thing about it, that 550,000 people moving, 540,000 people moving, they're not the ones that are only making $29,000 a year. That's big money, probably, because they could afford to move.
So, gentlemen, and I guess I'll start with you, Mr. DiGiacomo. How would you gauge right now public support? Do you think most people support the police or most people do not? I want the three of you to respond.
Well, I
to
think
that.
the silent majority, they support the police. You have a lot of support out there. It's the advocates and the people in the communities that have the most crime that are, have some of these groups like Black Lives Matter and some of the other, groups that are out there that are trying to defund the police, tie the hands of the police. And my question to them is, they keep saying they don't want to fill the jails with people of color. And my response to them is, well, the New York City detectives don't want to fill our morgues with people of color. And we're out there doing our job, protecting these families, trying to bring some comfort and closure when their child is shot or their mother is shot or their father is shot. That's what they should be doing, advocating for people in these communities, other than against the police. We have a tremendous amount of oversight. We're a great police department, the best in the world, and the community should be working with the police. And the district attorneys should be working with the police, not against the police.
That's an entirely different story because what's going on politically with the district attorneys around the country and some of America's cities, it defies logic. It makes you almost want to bang your head, or at least it makes me want to bang my head on the table. I thought district attorneys prosecute crimes and cases that the men and women of blue bring to them. So, Commissioner, Chief, I guess I'll put the same question to you. How much do you feel in your? And I guess, Chief, I'll put you on the hot seat for a little bit. Does it hurt you in your heart? I want you to be honest with us when you know that there's some in the community that don't appreciate what these officers that you have here in this room, what they're out there doing.
Doesn't hurt me. It's upsetting because if they only knew the truth, that just how much cops care and just how hard they try. And I said it before again, they're put in impossible situations, extremely complex situations, yet they do their job exceptionally. So look, to Paul's point, what he just said before, the silent majority, I've never gone anywhere to a meeting, a community meeting or an event and had anyone scream at me that we don't like you cops. It's just the opposite. The overwhelming majority of people that I run into or I associate with is very supportive of New York City cops. What's interesting is, though, when you watch the news on certain media outlets, that's not what you see. And maybe there's reasons behind that. I don't know. Here's what I could say. To John Catsimatidis and Margot Catsimatidis, thank you. And thank you not only for today, which is special, and, I feel very happy to be here. I'm blessed to be here. But thank you for every day, because this isn't the first event I've gone to where you're outspoken and vocal for your support of the men and women of the NYPD. So it's appreciated, it's recognized, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ryder?
So I'm fortunate. I live in a county that our county executive, Bruce Blakeman, our legislative body, they all support us. Our communities, for the most part, support us. The problem is everybody's afraid to speak up today. They're afraid to go outside that box and open their mouth because they're only going to get hammered. They come right back at you. That small group that sit there on their computers and start hammering you on social media, putting signs up, calling your house, harassing your neighbors. It's all because you come up and stand for what's right. We need to stand united. We need to make sure that they all stand up because the men and women in blue stand up every day for the communities. We need our communities to stand up for us. And again, I am the fortunate one. I live in Nassau County where they do support the men and women in blue.
A few more minutes of this panel. We'll let you gentlemen get back to your busy schedules. Mr. Katsimatidis, on the issue of the police, and this is a question I ask you at different events, but why do you do what you do? Why is this so important to you?
The truth?
Yes.
The 540,000 people that moved are the ones that don't feel safe. I live in Manhattan. I used to walk to restaurants. We walked around Manhattan to midnight. Restaurants were open. Our stores were open 24 hours a day. After dark, if you look around, not that many people are walking around anymore. And it's part of the death in New York City. And I am against, it's like Manhattan it's a vibrant city and doesn't want to die. And we got to do everything possible to make sure that nobody else moves out and that they feel safe. I tell my kids, don't ride the subways.
I tell my family the same thing.
Absolutely.
Do not ride the subway.
The other thing, I hate to put it on a national basis. I think the open borders and the migrant situation, and I interviewed President Clinton a couple weeks ago, and whoever wants to copy the interview, it was a phenomenal interview.
It was.
I believe in immigration. Yes, immigration. But me and Mr. Fugazi, 20 years ago, ran the Ellis Island Foundation. Immigration, yes, but you need checks and balances, who's coming and going. If you don't have checks and balances, who's coming and going, you don't have a country. We go to the airport and are asked to remove our belts, remove our shoes, and that border, they're just coming through. That is a joke. That is wrong. Yes, immigration, yes, but checks and balances. An Ellis Island type situation where people that are coming in pledge allegiance to the flag and to the United States of America, not to come here and try to change our lifestyle.
Well, that's going to have a compounding effect on crime as well. In my belief, there'll be an uptick in crime with the migrants coming in.
Crime.
We don't know who's coming in.
I could understand crime, but I am scared that terrorists have already come through those borders.
Sure.
And don't forget, New York City is the target.
We have under 5 minutes left. Oftentimes, we see on television where community members are giving their perspective of how to improve police-community relations. So on Back the Blue, here on 77 WABC, and again, I say I do it with 1,000% as a person of color who grew up in the projects in this city. I understand the job. It took me a while to get there, but I understand the job that you do. And I personally, I want to say thank you for what you do, day in, day out, night in, night out. Very few people say thank you, and you deserve to hear thank you each and every day, each and every day. But what I do want to ask is from your unique perspectives, and we have just a few minutes left. Again, from the law enforcement perspective, starting with you, Chief, how do we improve the relationship with the community? But I don't want to hear the talking points of the community. I want to hear it from the vantage point of law enforcement. How do we improve it?
I think the NYPD, we've invested so much in, community relations. And, just from my experience, I'm doing this over 3 decades. I just think open lines of communication, just sitting down. I think you get so much more done behind the scenes with the right people, just talking things out, working things out, and just hearing each other's sides versus screaming and yelling and fighting in public. I don't see much getting accomplished with that. But again, I mean, we do a lot. I mean, we have a whole bureau dedicated in the NYPD toward community relations, the Community Affairs Bureau.
Gentlemen?
Well, let me just say this, that policing at times, it's a contact sport. And it's not always pretty what we have to do. When you're arresting someone that's non-compliant or just stabbed someone or could have a firearm, the people in the community are just seeing one part of that puzzle, and they don't know what's going on before the actual contact with the police. So I think that the community should be involved in telling the people and where they live what transpired and what caused that to happen. Because, again, it's a contact sport, and they only see one piece of the puzzle. It has to be explained from one person in the community to the rest of the community that the person may have had a firearm, may have just stabbed someone, and let them know that we're out there doing our job and educate them on what our job is.
Commissioner?
So we got to keep the doors open. We got to have the dialogue. We got to have the communication. Absolutely. We got to sit down with our community members. We got to discuss problems back and forth, what they see, what we see, why it happens the way it does. But, we've never claimed to be a perfect world, right? The men and women in law enforcement are not perfect, but they have damn well caught excellence, and they have done a great job in their service to the people of this city and our counties. So when we open that dialogue, I want it to be fair dialogue. I don't want it to be a shouting match to shut me down every time I try to explain or go over something. I have great communities that come to these meetings, and there's usually 2 or 3 people in the crowd that just want to scream and yell.
Yep.
That's not how we get things done. Get in the room with those that really care about the problem.
Before a closing statement from Mr. Katsimatidis, and anything you want to say in closing, now is the time, but this is the last question. What's the best part of your job? What's the worst part of your job? Beginning with you, Mr. DiGiacomo.
Well, the worst part of my job is having to deal with, a line-of-duty family where a detective or a member of the service was shot and killed or paralyzed, and having to be with that family at that crisis in their life. And we never forget them. We always have them in our life and help them as many times as we can and as much as we can. That's the worst. The best times in the police department for me is serving New York City detectives. We have 5,400 New York City detectives that do a tremendous job out there, and I represent them as the union head with my board of officers, and that's what makes me happy, to enhance their lives, to make their lives better, their benefits better for their families, and that brings joy to my heart.
Chief?
So I'll start with the worst, is getting that phone call or notification that a cop was injured or a serious event occurred in the subway system where someone was injured or, God forbid, killed. That is by far the worst. Certainly the welfare and safety of my cops is my top priority. The best part of my job, to be quite frank, and listen, I'm doing this job not because I have to, because I truly believe in it, and I love this job. To be in this position, to be able to work alongside cops and tell their story, as we're doing right now, because their story is incredible, and their story is rich with tradition, bravery, sacrifice, and excellence. So by far the greatest part of my job is to tell their story.
Mr. Katsimatidis in a second, but Commissioner?
So the worst part of your job, yesterday was 11 years since Artie Lopez was gunned down on the Cross Island. That is the worst thing that you deal with. The best part of it, how we came together as a team to hunt down the killer, hunt him down like the animal that he was. We came together with the NYPD cops, detectives, the FDNY, MTA, state police. They come running. The Army forms, and we find that killer. We arrested him that night, and we put him into jail, and he died in jail. I never lost a minute of sleep over it. But the point was, as we bond together like a team when in the worst crisis.
Mr. Katsimatidis, again, thank you and your wife for the resources. And I say it over and over because I want the public to understand just what you two do, not only in private, but also in public. And I can tell Mrs. Katsimatidis is tired of me saying it. But thank you again, Mrs. Katsimatidis. Sir, please go ahead, Ms.
If you don't mind, I just want to reach out to the public and let them know that as we sit here today, there's a trial going on in Queens. A detective was killed, Detective Sackos, run down by a drunk driver. He left behind a young wife, wonderful person, and 2 young children. And I ask the public to please pray for that family, and please pray that this defendant is found guilty and put away for a long time.
That's something we all should do. Thank you for pointing that out. Mr. Catsimatidis, thank you for putting this together. You have the final word.
I want to thank all of you for being here today and getting the truth out to the public. And this is the greatest city in the world. And our duty is to try to do our best to make sure no more people move out, and that 540 number doesn't go up. Mm-hmm. And maybe if you go up and down Park Avenue and you look up on a weekend, there's nobody there. It's hurting the city.
Sad.
Nobody being there. It's hurting the restaurants. It's hurting everybody. And what I've said publicly, I wish that they would hold up on congestion pricing until the city makes a comeback. And the city could make a comeback, but we need our politicians to realize what the heck is going on. I don't want to lose the greatest city in the world. It's been good to me, my family. I'm an immigrant. It's been great to me and my family. And I'm here to defend our city. Thank you.
Well, outstanding panel. Please give them a round of applause. Major players here with us. Chief of Transit, Mike Kemper. Also, Paul DiGiacomo, the head of the Detectives Endowment Association, the president, and the police commissioner himself of Nassau County, Patrick Ryder. Please give them another round of applause. Mr. Catsimatidis, thank you for making this possible, as 77 WABC appreciates, honors, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to the men and women of law enforcement for your dedication. Thank you for what you do each and every day. I'm going to use a term that the kids use out on the street. Don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. We back law enforcement 1,000%. 77 WABC, back the blue. Thank you very much, folks.
And this will be on our website. We get 5 million people a month, I think. Tell your people, go to WABCradio.com, and we try to be informative, and that's what our job is. Thank you so much.